there's a sense of optimism and positivity about what is possible. And ultimately, underneath all of that, I mean, that personal agency, that belief that you have the power to live a better life, to live a healthier life, to live a longer life, that is the dream. That's what I think everybody wants. And I think it's hard to get yourself into a place where you actually believe it for many people. And I think that somehow there's something about, shared experience and in person that you actually do feel that way.
Welcome back to the Fitt Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Veneri. Today I'm joined by Sean Hess and Tyler Wakstein of Eudēmonia Summit. In this episode, we talk about designing transformational wellness experiences, from building impactful communities to blending science with personal growth. Plus, we announce our new partnership, the Eudemonia x Fitt Insider Health Innovation Lab, a curated, executive-focused experience for leaders shaping the future of well-being. Let's get into it. The Fitt Insider Podcast is presented by EGYM. EGYM's smart fitness ecosystem is transforming healthcare through exercise. Combining strength equipment with AI-powered software and corporate wellness platform WellPass, it's leading the shift to proactive, preventative health. Learn more about EGYM's intelligent workout solutions at egym.com. Sean, Tyler, welcome to Fitt Insider. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Joe. Good to be here.
Yeah, excited to chat today and diving into Eudemonia, all the things that you have going on. I'm sure some listeners maybe attended last year's event, some looking forward to this year. We'll certainly dive into all the details today, but to kick things off, why don't we do kind of quick intros starting with Sean, and then, we'll jump into the conversation.
Sure. I'm Sean Hess. I'm the CEO and founder of Eudēmonia Summit. Before that, I was the co-founder of Wanderlust Festival.
And I'm Tyler Wakstein, and I'm the head of partnership for Eudēmonia. And before that, I was one of the partners at Summit Series. And before that, ran marketing for a company called Life is Good.
Some of those things, both, I think, Wanderlust and Summit Series, those will ring a bell for people in this space, just thinking about what goes into building events, experiential, just like take people on site, really transformational experiences, and certainly community, right? That both of those things are, buzzwords might not be the right thing, but they are certainly top of mind for everybody across the broader health and wellness space, just with, how do we engage people? How do we bring back that in-person connection? And how do we do it in an authentic and impactful way, right? When people are taking the time and money to travel and get into a hotel and do all these things, right? They're looking for that impact. So, Sean, just I think starting with Wanderlust and now moving into Eudemonia, what is it that you've kind of seen? How have you been able to kind of seize on this opportunity and really forge connection and build meaningful experiences for people?
I mean, boy, it's been a long journey. Wanderlust lasted, from 2009 to, at least with my involvement, to the end of 2022. So it was a long period for me. Saw a lot of change and a lot of different things happen. I mean, I would say the common thread is really just that the power of in-person experiences, and in particular connected to wellness regimens. I mean, obviously, we know how hard it is for people to stick and actually change behavior and live a healthier lifestyle. It's, sort of always the bugaboo of getting people on the right path, and one thing that's for sure is that it's a hell of a lot easier to do that when you're doing it with friends and community, when there's a supportive, and passion and empowering community around you. And so, this gathering that community in various forms, whether it was on a mountainside or, in a field in big urban areas in Wanderlust, or more in a conference style environment with Eudemonia. I mean, that's proven to be, I think, something that has never lost its charm. It's something that's still just as relevant today. I think, what's changed for me a lot in since Wanderlust is really, I guess, two big things. I mean, one, I would say it's the rise of the wellness podcaster and the fact that there's now a sort of class of quasi celebrity talent that really has massive followings, millions of followers, and tens of millions or hundreds of millions across all of them, which just simply really didn't exist prior to COVID. So that's been one big change. And I think the other one is really just personal tech, the rise of personal wellness tech. So we are able to measure, monitor, and just know more about what's going inside our bodies than we've ever been able to do. And that really creates the possibility, I think, for a new kind of event. And that's what, in a lot of ways, led to Eudemonia.
Yeah, and I think kind of building on that, Tyler, taking and applying kind of your experience and expertise around building community, both as it relates to in person, but also just like networks, right? Like connecting people, making sure that you're kind of curating these introductions, be it in person or maybe behind the scenes. What was your experience like at Summit? And then how did it come to apply and get you involved at Eudemonia?
Well, curation is the key word there, I think, is all about like curating and being super intentional about designing spaces for relationships to blossom. For me, I wasn't the founder of Summit. I came in, 5 years into Summit series, already having such an amazing foundation of a community. And the founders and the team did such an amazing job allowing people like me to contribute. And so in some ways, like for some of the learnings at Summit was like it wasn't just about inviting people to attend, it was inviting people to like help shape the experience, right? And like contribution breeds ownership. And so there was this like kind of natural, organic kind of process within the community that was like went to the events to actually enter the community. The event was like once you attend the event, you kind of got it and then you were able to participate, and and that like consistency of participation then builds trust, and then that trust kind of builds, magic, and those magics creates, new co-founders or new investors or new, lifelong friendships. So I think the experience I had with Summit was incredible. And when I met Sean and, kind of heard about the vision of what he was building with Eudemonia, in the earlier days, way before we even announced Eudemonia to the world last year, I was really excited to kind of bring that experience to Eudemonia, because in some ways, what we're building with Eudemonia is like part leadership conference, part consumer expo, part wellness festival, and this like mass participation consumer experience that really like is designed for like belonging. In some ways, like when you go to an event and when you're like looking to be part of a community, you're like looking to belong to something bigger than yourself. And I think when you're talking about the wellness world in particular, everyone's on their own respective wellness journey, and then most of them are usually going through it on their own. And so it's all about having that support system, and in some ways like that's the core of what we're trying to do with Eudemonia is like, give people that support system and the practical tools that can help them become the architect of their own health.
I think a lot of the things that you both mentioned, I tend to bucket it almost in this like brand and community and experience, and like they're so kind of nebulous and hard to define, and everybody wants to do it, right? Like everybody wants to hold the event that people come to, everybody wants to have the community that you want to belong to, everybody wants to have the brand that for some reason just feels like super special and people gravitate towards. Like, do you have a perspective or a framework, or just like how do you actually do that in a way that's impactful and doesn't feel forced or fake, or what so often happens, like you get to an event and it's like it really like kind of under you come out going like, was that really worth it? Was it what it was made up to be? Was it what I wanted to get out of it? So actually delivering on those things, like I think the big question is like how do you do it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I don't think there's one answer to that one, but I would say a couple things leap to mind for me. One is I think just finding a authentic passion point in yourself and in the audience. So something that you care deeply about and something that a lot of other people care deeply about. In our case, originally with Wanderlust, I guess you'd call it like yoga and mindfulness was probably the core initial glue, and that passion point kind of everything revolved around it. Here, I think for lack of a better word, self optimization of some kind, or longevity would probably be the key words here. But that's something that I care about, it's something Tyler cares about, it's something everyone on our team cares about, and then it's obviously something we know a lot of other people care about. So that's one answer, and I think that once you have that glue, then there's a lot of actual nuts and bolts. I mean, what I learned in Wanderlust just over the years was getting out of the way, making the experience, designing the experience with moments of surprise and delight, moments of amazing things, but mostly trying to have it be seamless, hassle free. Like there shouldn't be any lines, there should be like enough bathrooms for everyone. I mean, all that stuff sounds so boring, but I really think a lot of the times, like you get the passion point, you create a container that has beauty, it has inspiration, and it removes friction, for lack of a better word, you can have a lot of amazing things happen. And that's perhaps that last part is the unsexy part of the event production. But honestly, it's where I see a lot of events fail. Like they might have the passion and they might attract the right people, but the event has so many things that are either annoying or just kind of off, that you end up in a situation where it just doesn't have that transformational quality that you're looking for. The final piece, what I just say that one always has to be aware of is, of course, commerce. We're all in this professionally, and yeah, I mean, this is how we also put bread on our table. So we need to have it be a successful business as well as a you know, meaningful experience to consumers. But, I think too many events lead with commerce, and the commercial things are sort of prized above the experiential. And, the events that I most respect, and, Summit was one of them, but there were many other Wanderlists I think fitted that the experience, nothing's going to go above that. If you want to do commerce in it, great, and it needs to fit within that, but it's always secondary to experience. So that's my short answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think to add to that, I think on the commercial point, it's critical to talk about like, like we don't sell our stages, like the editorial integrity of the content is really important. And like having essentially a separation of church and state around like sponsorship and how that works, because I do think it's like the authenticity of the experience is so core to why people come. And when people just feel like they know there's going to be opportunities to be sold, and people are a lot of ways are attending events because they want to be sold or want that discovery of new things. But I think the commercial component is a really critical one that we, kind of are very intentional about. I think another two couple things that stand out is like just like shared purpose over shared interests, right? Like a lot of events are just around here's the interests of the industry and but like if they're but like a strong community is rooted in like purpose, not just common interests. Like so you got to have something that's more meaningful and feel like there's like a real commitment to participate. And then I think, yeah, I mean, the magic is in the design, like the experience design, right? Like we used to say at Summit all the time, and the founders really bred this into us of like, it's about creating experiences that get people out of their head and into their heart. And that might sound like like woo woo or whatever, but like in some ways it's about like creating vulnerability so people can like feel comfortable and put their guard down. And it because when people come to like business events in particular, usually they're there with like how many business cards can I get, how many new leads can I get, how do I convert this expense of this trip into new business opportunities. And it's very like tactical versus like the energy of like putting the guard down. And it's not about what do you do, it's more about like what do you love, like what gets you excited to wake up every morning, and how do you build relationships starting with that versus just like a transaction. But I think the thing that Sean and I and the team really love is like the experience design, and like thinking through like how do people enter the event and what is that like, what are those transitions and rituals of like how people arrive and how people leave and how people like every day when the event closes, how does that transition into the evening programming, and those little details that like just takes tons of experience to workshop is like the real magic of experience design that I really like love and get excited about.
As you're describing that, like this get out of your head and into your heart, like there are, I think some areas where that people might be like, oh, that's a little, woo woo or touchy feely, whatever. But in the wellness space, that's like, you're right on it. You might as
Yeah.
like, you might
Yeah.
as well, that could have been, part of like an actual, kind of like tagline or act at a Wanderlust festival. Like that is what it was in some ways. And Sean, earlier when you're talking about like just this rise of self experimentation, if people call it biohacking, if they call it quantified self, like all these different things. But now that it's just moved into more broadly, like longevity and at home diagnostics and wearables and all of these things that people are seeing, like that can be overwhelming. It can be confusing. It can be isolating. And so when we talk about bringing people together around a lot of these concepts, whether it's, last year going into the first event, or as you think about this big picture when you're sitting down, right, and thinking grand plan, like what is eudaimonia, what do we want the individual to experience, what do we want it to build into, like for people that weren't there, people that are hearing about this now, like what can they expect and what do you want to deliver in terms of this like magical kind of experiential design?
Yeah, I mean, literally, I think what you experience is there's a wide range of what I think of as things you can do and things you can learn. So ideally, you're kind of stimulating your body and your mind, and at both. So we have everything from yoga and meditation to resistance training to spinning. You can go through the thing. We have a wide range of all the cutting edge treatments from hyperbaric to PEMF to red light therapy to whatever, all things you can do. And then, of course, there's just, the widest. I mean, we have over 100 lecturers, giving talks on basically every imaginable personal health topic that you can think of, from, mental health and physical health and everything in between. But I think the true takeaway, though, is that there is something, and the emotional takeaway, for lack of a better word, is that there is something unbelievably empowering about finding yourself in a community who is all interested in different ways in the same thing, about knowing, about filtering through that information and all the onslaught of information that we all is, and doing that together. And I think that there are moments that happen, and we've just, watched it, whether they were musical performances or whether it's, seeing, getting to ask Huberman a question. There are these moments where people just sort of drop into this sense that I think there's a sense of optimism and positivity about what is possible. And ultimately, underneath all of that, I mean, that belief, that personal agency, that belief that you have the power to live a better life, to live a healthier life, to live a longer life. That is the dream. That's what I think everybody wants. And I think it's hard to get yourself into a place where you actually believe it for many people. And I think that somehow there's something about, shared experience and in person that you actually do feel that way. And, I used to describe Wanderlust as is sort of as an event where you leave having with the feeling of a restored faith in the essential goodness of humanity, like this idea that, wow, people are really good. We want to help each other. We're not opposed, and I think that there's something like that. And obviously health is the lens or the filter there, but I do think it kind of has that spiritual element to it, and that people uncover as they're there. But it's not what we advertise.
And then Tyler, just thinking about that as it relates to the big picture and what people experience, and then maybe this year, what's bigger, different? How do you build upon and not only improve the experience, but like grow it and broaden it as you think about year two and beyond?
I mean, for me, like selfishly, like I got really excited about the event because personally, I can't listen to a lot of the podcasts in this category for 3 hours talk about like really heady topics. And for me, as like an experiential learner, like I wanted, like, how do you take the Huberman podcast or Peter Thiel or Mel Robbins or Rich Roll's podcast or many others that we have at the event, like, and turn it into a festival? Like, how do you actually make that into an experience? And so for me, it's like a format of learning that is better for me and I think many others. And I just think that's like the magic. And I also think is there's something about like the trial and error of like having it be in shared community, that with that combination is just like a magical equation. I think, for this year, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, year one of an event, no matter how much experience you have, is hard. Like, it's just hard. And so I think just so excited to like have successfully done year one, have it been it was a success. And like there's still just so many things to improve upon. And so we're just like in the refinement phase, which is really fun. From like how do you make the expo more entertaining? How do you do different types of content that is like more interactive? How do you make the movement and the treatment more experiential? Evening programming, improve the food is a huge one. It got some exciting things to announce around that. And then I think there was just also tons of interest from our community and specifically our sponsors and exhibitors around how do we help facilitate deeper connections within the leaders of well-being. And so excited about some of the things we're kind of incubating as we go into year two that we'll be announcing soon.
On the leadership side, it's something that, Anthony and I have thought a lot about at Fit over the years. And we've, I guess, dabbled with what does it look like to bring the people together around a dinner or, connecting in person, or kind of maybe building off an existing event and saying, hey, well, everybody's here. Like, let's do a workout, let's do a meetup, let's do a dinner or drinks or whatever it might be, all around the things that you guys are talking about, and really build out on the community side, which is like, what is the elevated, meaningful, impactful, curated, authentic, like really well executed, industry B2B event for leaders across health and wellness. And as we built out the Fit platform and thought about the things that needed to be part of this flywheel, certainly events and community were part of that. So in getting to know you all and learn about Eudemonia, this idea of, hey, how do we partner to do something where we tap this network, these relationships, and kind of bring it together with your obvious passion and expertise and the network you've built out from putting on, Wanderlust and Eudemonia last year, but really create something that I think I'm really confident that the industry hasn't seen before on the executive side. And so, yeah, to be announced, as you kind of teased, Tyler, but excited to be working together to bring that to the forefront, and then, like you did in year one, build on it going forward.
I would just say that, I've spent many years in the music industry before this, and used to go to South by Southwest, which I think has always just stood out for me as one of it. It's a very unique and rare, event that can have a really meaningful industry B2B component where, you just have to be there if you're in, music or, whatever, film later and other things that they built out. But at the same time has an incredibly valuable B2C component where there's like live music and the greatest artists. And I've always I wanted Wanderlust to be that, and I think we did have that to some degree, but I think it's even more intentional with Eudemonia, this idea that it's the cool thing about the wellness industry is that the vast, vast majority of players there are purpose-driven people. They're there. Yes, they'd like to succeed and do well financially, but they're there first because, they're a biohacker, because they had an injury and they recovered using some modality, because there's some personal connection to what they're doing. And people like that being able to bring them together, have inspire, see new collaborations come out of it, see new products developed. Like, I think that there's just such a huge opportunity to bring that community together. And then at the same time, to have all the information and the knowledge that those people possess, also connecting them with, talent, influencers, podcasters, great medical doctors, all the things that they need, that's all there too. And I think that there really is, long term, I would love to think that maybe we're could become the South by Southwest of wellness or well-being, like a week-long celebration of, all aspects of, human health and potential. And yeah, I think we're taking some good steps towards that this year.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think there's the idea of Fit plus Eudemonia and bringing our collective ecosystems together to produce a B2B event that is not just the traditional industry circuit industry event that I don't think has really nailed it yet, and an opportunity to create like and spark like real high value impact driven relationships is like what we're seeking to do together. And for us, like I think it's more about like how do you create like it's more executive leadership retreat format is how we're thinking about the event design than we are just like the same circuit of people talking about the same things that all the executives in the industry already know about. And so, but it is going to be a level of curation that I don't think the industry has seen yet. Like, I think we want to be really intentional about who's part of this group and really have it be decision makers who are leaders in the industry that have that shared purpose, and work together collectively on how do we advance the industry forward. And I also think there's a really cool component to have like 150 to 250 executives, investors, leaders of the industry meeting and connecting and enjoying dinners and really kind of thoughtful time together, but also to be able to see consumers interacting with brands and with experts at the same time is like a very unique combination because it gets people out of their like bubble, and allows them to kind of put their head on a swivel a little bit on like what's actually happening, how are consumers interacting with these experts, with these brands, with these modalities in a much more like unique way than just like executives sitting in a ballroom at a hotel, talking about the future of the industry without like the important piece, which is the consumer, that sometime I think these industry talks forget about.
This episode of the Fitt Insider Podcast is brought to you by EGYM. EGYM makes some of the most innovative strength training machines on the market, but that's only one part of their integrated ecosystem. With connected fitness equipment, AI-powered gym software, and a comprehensive corporate wellness offering, it's forging the future of preventative health. Partnering with companies worldwide, EGYM's WellPass program improves employee health by expanding access to premier fitness and health facilities. Upgrading gym floors, EGYM equips every operator with smart equipment and AI tools to create hyper-personalized training plans for every exerciser. Putting it all together, they're transforming healthcare through exercise. Experience the power of EGYM's ecosystem at egym.com. Yeah, it's getting out of this like philosophical, what are we in theory, what are we building? Like you're actually immersed in what is being built, how it's being used, who's like what are the paths to connect with those people in terms of the experts, like, and then what has become such a huge part of all this. And Sean, you mentioned this is like just in terms of the opportunity that's been created is just like the kind of science educators that have now shifted this conversation in a way where it's like they're in entire economies in and of themselves. So when you think about Huberman and Mark Hyman and Rich Roll, like the not only the influence but the motivation, aspiration, inspiration that goes along with all of that, is you have the opportunity to fuse these things. I think that's where it gets to this level of like the South by Southwest or like the TED, like really doing something powerful in a way where you can sense the momentum. Whereas at the kind of run of the mill conference, whatever, like, that's really absent. You don't have the, you can feel it when you're there kind of vibe that you would when you talk about something like, a festival bringing all these things together. And another thing that I hadn't considered before was just the way, maybe even more than other industries, that when you talk about people that are passionate about health and wellness and improving themselves, and Sean, like you mentioned, people coming to this and really the executives and the leaders like having this passion for self-improvement. Maybe they were an athlete, maybe they had a personal health experience, maybe somebody in their family suffered from some type of chronic ailment that they couldn't get the solution, so they made it themselves. And you hear these stories all the time that are super inspiring, but really just creates this like mission driven, really passionate person. Like I think more than other industries, you can have this transfer from, oh, I was a consumer of this thing that I was passionate about, to, oh, now I work at, or I want to work at, or I invested in, or I am now the CEO. I started this company that, again, that doesn't really exist right now in terms of like building the inroads for that, because that's the type of outreach we get all the time is like, hey, I listen to the podcast, I read the newsletter, like I played sports in college, like I love this more than I love anything. It's like, how do I break into this industry? Like, how do I have this idea, I would love to apply myself here. So just thinking about like the types of people and the opportunity, both at Eudemonia, but then as it evolves into the maybe someday like the week long festival and really spectacle of this, like I think it's the opportunity is just massive.
It's amazing to me as you sort of delve into this and start talking to people, even people who don't work in health and wellness, I think more and more have a passion, or in some ways wish they did, or they have a passion so they want to become an investor, or they have a passion so they have an idea for a product, or it's really just there's a cultural explosion of awareness in this. And ironically, if there's probably any good thing that came out of COVID itself, I think it's really that. Not that you can pin the entire explosion of health and wellness on COVID by any means, but certainly it encouraged people to become so much more active in their participation in their own health and wellness, and also so much more focused, I think, on research, science, the foundations, and really learning, kind of the underpinnings and what they can trust and what they can't. And those two trends I think are phenomenal. And actually they're good trends. They got, whatever. Some people I think tried to unfairly malign the quest for more knowledge. And I think that's just the wrong attitude. I think everybody has the power to, learn a lot more about their health and make educated health decisions. And, to the extent that we can be part of fostering that community, both for, new products and entrepreneurs, and also at the same time for consumers, I think we're here to do good in the world. It's like super exciting to me.
How do you guys, to this point, and maybe as you build out the event, think about who's attending, speaking, exhibiting, all those sorts of things. As you were saying that, Sean, it made me think like there is the criticism of the wellness industry, right? That it's, it's snake oil, it is woo woo. If you kind of talked about like that, there's no real guide rails, like anything goes. How much factors into that? Like the level of either thought or beyond curation, right? Almost like protection. To think about like what fits and what doesn't, and to what extent, like, do you guys allow or stop that from happening?
It's such a good question. It's sort of the million-dollar question, actually. And I don't think we have a perfect answer for it, but I think in answering it, I would say one thing that I want to be transparent about in the beginning is like there are many wellness modalities, practices, compounds, substances, things that are interesting. They are kind of the category of promising, but you cannot yet find, good solid RCTs supporting it. You can only find anecdotal evidence or observational studies or other things. And we want to be able to talk about that. And we want to be able to talk about it though in a way that I think is honest and has integrity. And so the way that we try to do it is to make sure that, our experts are talking about things not, in marketing puffery, but actually in a way that is based on the foundation of how much science is there. And so, I think, to educate a consumer and to know that, I don't know, we were talking, I was having a dialogue about peptides today. I mean, there is great anecdotal evidence supporting it. There's also very logical scientific reasons to think that these compounds could be incredibly effective. There are very few RCTs proving that they work. And so the question is, should we talk about them or not? And I think that yes, we should, but we should also be honest about that that's the state of that particular compound and substance. And so then you as a consumer are making the educated choice to, try it or not. And so for me, I think it's really just important to have humility, I suppose, about what we know and what we don't know, and just really be very upfront and honest. And I think that that's the biggest problem in the wellness industry. Like, I don't think, I mean, when you look around and all the people I know, I mean, I don't know, I know a couple people that I might think are like maybe a little bit suspect or prone to, literal exaggeration. I think the vast majority of people believe what they're saying and they're super passionate and they see themselves as on the cutting edge of the new frontier of technologies and of protocols that are going to change human health for the better. And the just truth is that some of them are right and some of them are wrong. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, we're all going to have to figure this out together. And I mean, RCTs cost tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars to perform. There's not any way that that can be the only way that we can move health forward. So I think, what we're trying to do is educate people enough to know how to ask the right questions, to know how to evaluate evidence. We're trying to get, leaders of companies to be honest about how they portray it. And, I think within that realm, we should be free to talk about all sorts of exciting new things. And that's what we're here to do. So specifically though, it's a very hard on every case by case basis. I mean, it's very hard. You have to make educated calls. I mean, my programming, my wife does a lot of the programming with me and a few other folks, and it's challenging for sure. We do have an advisory panel we're sort of putting together of a range of MDs and other, scientists, which obviously I think will help going forward. But yeah, that is always the trickiest part. I'll be honest.
But I think to add to that, I think there's like a fact and fiction conversation of like we and we talk a lot about like we're gonna be wrong sometimes, but it's like I do think we should be more on the cutting edge and innovative and be just like prefacing those talks or those sessions or those newsletters with the data isn't there yet, but we still think this is interesting for you to know about, right? So there's like the fact and fiction part, but then there's like the political part that's also really interesting right now, right? And there's like, like health has become like very political, very polarizing. And in some ways, like it's very important for us also to have like be neutral on that on the political side because like so we need to have both sides of the conversation around vaccines being talked about, right? Because that's an important topic. And we need to have both sides around legislation around GLP-1s, and like these things I think have to be discussed. And I think part of our role as leaders collectively in this industry, not just us on this phone, but also like probably everyone listening to this is like the responsibility of just like democratizing access and ultimately enabling and empowering people to do their own research. But like I think for us as curators and event producers that are like programming sessions with intention, like we're having really fun conversations internally around how to like make sure we have both sides of the political spectrum on panels and topics so that we can make sure we're addressing it in a very kind of bipartisan way.
Yeah, I will probably get myself canceled by my next comment, but I was but I was just thinking of, I mean, the vaccine comment. I mean, so this is a very good example. Like, I think obviously there are many pro-vax voices, conventional medicine voices, and now we know what those folks are. We will bring some of those folks in. Then there's the people that I would say are raising very reasonable questions about, mRNA vaccines, or the size of the schedule, the frequency of dosing, the ages of which, all those kind of questions, which I think are absolutely reasonable things to raise, things to discuss, things to research further, and that might get lumped by some into the anti-vax world, but I actually don't see it as that. I see that as actually questioning so-called established scientists with some actual reasonable data behind it. Then there's like true anti-vax, which would be, I don't believe in any vaccines or vaccines cause autism. And I wouldn't platform those folks. It's not to say that there aren't people that hold those views, but they're not, I don't believe that there's enough support, based on the evidence that I can review to, want to platform somebody who's like flat out like vaccines cause autism. Now, again, I'll get canceled for this, at least by some potential ticket holders, but that's a good example of like how we might parse an issue. It's like I want to draw a wide spectrum around the scientific center and try to have all sorts of discussions, even ones that might be unconventional and might really tick people off. That's okay. But I would try to exclude things that I think one can say with a fairly high degree of certainty that this is pseudoscience, or this isn't based on actual science. So that is an ongoing decision making process, and it's also something that will evolve over time. But yeah, that's the goal.
Another one that Sean loves is quantum health.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's more of an internal joke. My joke is that we automatically ban any product that claims to be based on quantum physics, just because I think that's one of the ones that has I have not found a lot of actual hard science supporting those claims in the past, but that's more of a joke than a reality. But yeah.
But it's a perfect example of like Dr. Joe Dispenza and a lot of the work that he's doing and amount of the impact that he's had in with so many people. I mean, tons of people I know has like really healed like chronic illness through meditating. And John and I are both meditators and believe in the power of meditation. But it's like that's one of those things that's like on the cutting edge. That's like but like where's the science and how do we justify or attribute like meditating an hour a day? How does that heal a chronic illness? I do think there's some interesting studies that I just learned about, but those are things that like these are all like topics of curating events and platforming leaders that are fun conversations that we have internally, and we just are very intentional about that, and I think that's part of like what makes us, I think, special and the programming really unique is like the real thought and intention around the editorial integrity around the program, but also the internal debates that we also love to have that don't not everyone always gets this chance to see.
I mean, fundamentally, I think if I had another personal goal for the conference, it would be that, if you go back even 20 years when we started Wanderlust, there was much more of a clear schism between so-called Western medicine and science-based, and then Eastern philosophy, or whatever you want to call it, which might have included yoga and meditation. And then lo and behold, there have been a ton of, studies on certainly the effects of meditation on cortisol levels and mental health and relationships. And there's lots of other things that hard science supporting these so-called Eastern practices. And I think that, if I had any goals, there would be the breakdown of some of these walls, certainly between East and West. That's already happening. But I think also now politically, I would like to see that it's okay to have people, raise certain reasonable questions about vaccines, and have that not be that you're immediately a right wing nut because you raised that. That to me is insane. Like, we should not live in a world where you're not allowed to question science, and as long as it's based on science, and as long as also you're submitting yourself to a willingness to being convinced by science when science comes out. And that's where I think, if we could strip away some of the ideology and allow us to, have a respectful conversation about what actually works and then figure out why it works, we'd all be in a better place, and probably a better place as a nation too. So, yeah, that's a bit of a lofty goal, but hopefully, the conversation will have those effects too.
Well, it's important, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to give you the opportunity to speak to it, just so folks know that like the level of thought and humility, as you said, and like care that goes into making those decisions. That with to some extent, there's always going to be, whether it's intentionally exaggerated, knowingly, or things that just turn out to be unproven in the end. Like the idea that that's what quote unquote wellness is right, like all of these kind of overpromise and snake oil and all those things. That's something, right, Anthony and I have also dealt with our entire career, just like working in this industry. And when we started doing like the B2B media component of this, you know years ago now, it's, if you want to call it wellness, our thought, as you described, Sean, is like everything is going to be wellness, and that it might be now longevity or health span or well-being or Eastern or Western, but it's all, put it in whatever bucket you want to put it into. But as people care more and more about their health and invest in it, and COVID accelerated that, all the things that we talked about, like what we term health, wellness, well-being, longevity, is going to continue to build and build and build until it is interchangeable with just life, right? Like you're alive, you want to be healthy, you're going to invest in these things, are going to be new things. And walking this line for us between operators who just talk about things that we're seeing and making observations and sharing insights with other people building in the space, and capital J journalist who's talking about new and emerging things. It's like that's not what we are, that's not what we aspire to be. So I think in many ways it's, we just defaulted to, we are going to be on the rational, skeptical, optimism side of this and say, yeah, we want things to continue to move in a direction that people are net getting more healthy, focusing on health more. And the paths and the products and the influencers and the voices, like, yes, we will bring the best information we can to the table, but it's not on us to decide who's right and who's wrong, and what people are going to buy and their habits and all those things. So I think that kind of similarity was like, you could be what has now happened in a lot of other industries, like call it like a tech crunch, which decided, no, we're actually going to put down the industry and challenge everything that's happening in terms of like, what is innovation, what is moving forward, what is optimism. Or you could be kind of neutral, but also on the optimistic side to say, hey, we want all these people to win. We want all the things that they're talking about to be true. And we want at the end of the day, like everybody to be healthier. So I think, having the in-person physical embodiment of that will prove, in, one person's opinion, right, to be the right place to come down on it.
Yeah, I liked what you said, skeptical optimist. I think that's actually a really good thing. I mean, the skepticism in the sense that, hey, prove it to me. A lot of things are, it's great to talk about that. It's interesting. And then the optimist being, hey, progress is possible. There's all these ideas swirling out there, and we can believe in them and we can work through them. But again, apply some sort of skeptical filter to everything that's coming along, because many of them are going to turn out to not be true. And that's just how life works. It's how science works. It's how everything works. So yeah, I think it's a nice framing. Makes sense to me.
In terms of, both as we're wrapping up the conversation, but also looking ahead to what's next, what can people look forward to, maybe starting to think about, as you announce and tease, like certainly we tease some things here today, and then there will be continue to roll out information. Like, what should people look forward to? Like, what can you say now in building towards the event in the fall?
Well, I mean, we have a whole wave of about another 40 experts to announce, which is really exciting. That'll be happening sometime in July. So we're only about, I don't know, maybe not even just over half of our full lineup is announced. So there's a lot more still to come there that will be, I think, really exciting to people. The schedule and all the actual agenda, which sort of gets into the nuts and bolts of what you can learn from whom and who's speaking on what, that's all going to come out in August. So super exciting. It's always like a big, exciting moment for me just to kind of see the whole program together and how it all works out. I know Tyler's working on some really cool and big partnerships, which are, obviously always financially great, but these are also experientially, I think will add a ton to the richness of the festival. We have, I think we mentioned briefly the culinary program, and if there was one piece of feedback we got last year where we might have missed the mark, or I mean, it wasn't really under our control, which is why we missed the mark. But this year we've made some serious strides, both daytime and nighttime, to really, I think, line up food and nourishment with the values of our brand. So I think that'll be, exceptional and big plus from versus last year. So yeah, that's on the top of my head. Tyler, what do you got?
Yeah, I think there's some great experts and brands to announce their role. I'm really excited about this B2B event that we're going to be producing with you guys, that we'll announce in the next, month or so. We also have an amazing sweepstakes that's running right now called Thrive in 25. That's probably the best sweepstakes. Yeah, I mean, it's got like $20,000 of value from a lot of our sponsors and exhibitors. It's just amazing. Two badges to Eudemonia, flights, hotels, plus like $20,000 worth of product. So if you live in an apartment in New York City, you might be challenged with receiving a pallet of goods to your house. But really excited about that. It's been a lot of excitement. Yeah, I think it's like the year one was about like the foundation and like launching the brand. Like with the end of the day, it's like you're building a brand, and more importantly, you're building this community. And like the way in which the community has like continued the conversation post event after last year has just been like really inspiring. We have this WhatsApp group. It's like active every day. People are supporting each other. People are asking advice. And to see that like evolve and grow into year two is really exciting. And so it's not just about like the event, but it's about like how do you help facilitate and support the conversation after the event. Um, so that's always like exciting to see as we go into year two, just like the depth of the community really kind of starting to like flourish and blossom. So yeah, that's a little bit about what I'm excited about and should be good.
In terms of between now and then, obviously, it's learning about the full kind of schedule. We talked about that rolling out, like all the upgrades and things that you're making from last year. But on the other side, just in terms of people that might want to get involved, whether that's sponsor, exhibit, like other ways to participate, I guess how much more room for that is there, and what's the best way to kind of go about that as people are thinking about, hey, this sounds amazing. Like I would love to be involved.
Yeah, I mean, there's still sponsorship and exhibitor opportunities. We're about, I'd say, 70% sold on the expo. We have a pretty high level of curation that goes into curating our expo. But yeah, there's definitely interest information on our website. People can also, our website's eudemonia.net. And people can email partnerships at eudemonia.net for more information. There's a lot of information on our website. But yeah, I think there's just like great offers on tickets that will continue to. We have an amazing kind of group that have already kind of purchased tickets, but I think getting new people to participate and join this community is something we're very excited about, and we're here to support people within their wellness journey and provide this platform to people that can immerse them in all the things that we're trying to achieve with Eudemonia.
I mean, just to call out a couple things. I mean, we've price the tickets. I think, I mean, this is a 3 or 4 thousand person event this year. I'm hoping for four, I would say. So, it's a fairly large event. We've priced them, aggressively so that people who buy early, including now, are if the prices go up substantially as we get closer to the event. So if you are considering coming, it's definitely wise to buy now. We do have two, programs. We have a special deal for students. If you are an active enrolled full-time student at an accredited university of some kind, you can get a badge for $300, which is the most screaming deal of all times. We just really wanted to make sure we had, and there's limited the number that we will give out, but we really wanted to make sure that younger people in particular who are maybe sort of at the beginning of their, wellness journey, sort of start thinking about this stuff earlier. So that's really exciting. And then we also have a scholarship program, a need-based scholarship program, which is we've actually our sponsor Volo Foundation helped us underwrite that, and so we're giving anywhere from completely free to low cost tickets out to people in need who are just interested in coming. So both of those things are available and also on our website.
Perfect. We will make sure all that, from the sweepstakes that you mentioned to website tickets, all that, in the show notes. People check that out. Of course, we'll be talking about it more as we announce the B2B partnership coming up and continuing to promote the event now until we're there. So super excited for about this conversation, about everything we have coming up, and appreciate you guys making some time today.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Joe.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you got value from the conversation, please consider subscribing and sharing the podcast with a friend or colleague. It's a massive help. And if you want more content like this, including news and insights on the latest industry developments, subscribe to the Fitt Insider newsletter at insider.fit.co. And one more thing, you can learn more about our recruiting and consulting services at fit.co. That's FITT.co. I'll see you here next week.